Why, hello everyone. This is going to be a little more laid back, I think. This is obviously, as you can see, it's on the podcast channel, so it's going to be something different. I'm going to be doing podcasts on occasion, but this one here is going to be just a little thing of me spurting out something random. Mostly because it's something different I wanted to try. Other people have done things like this before, obviously. And I'll be covering more than just this one topic in the whole thing. I'll likely to go over other pieces of information within another time period. This one here specifically is going to be about anime, so if you don't like anime, you're probably not going to like this one specific video, but I'll probably have a few other videos, maybe about cartoons, most definitely about video games, because obviously my main channel is about video games, so it's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of other things, but this is more about my guilty pleasure with shows of that. Within my guilty pleasure, there is one show that is, for some reason, 4 seasons long with a 5th one announced. It's obnoxiously, it's incredibly silly, but it's still good, and I'm going to explain why it's still good, and how it kind of pushes ideas forward, even though it's obnoxiously silly, and keeps its head serious. This is Symphogear. Symphogear has many seasons, and each one has their own unique charm to it. We'll get out of the way. The first season is probably the worst by far. The characters are rather flat. The enemy designs don't look that pretty. It's very clear that they're on a low budget, and they weren't really intending for the show to do so well. It's probably mostly thanks to the high-quality cast they got. Almost every single person who plays a character is both a singer and a voice actress. So they got all the double charm. That and during the first episode, they had a character, Kanade, who shows up. She's even on the main cover. If you go look at the first cover of the very first, I think it was manga, or was it the anime cover? I'm not sure. But it was like the very first volume of either one. And it has her in like full detail, and you can see everything. Yeah, she's dead. She dies in the first episode. She stays dead. She's one of the characters that actually stays dead permanently. And they literally push it to the end, but it was this and this. It's actually kind of nice to see a character die in the first episode and then not come back at some point. She comes back in flashbacks, but obviously that's because it's a flashback, so it's not really that big. Most of the characters have different types of personalities to them, and each one of them have their own unique message, I guess. Put it. Each one has because Symphogear, as you could probably guess from the sympho part of it, it's symphony. So every single character basically utilizes songs and all that to do battle. Yes, I know that is just obnoxiously silly, and why would I watch a show like this? Why? Because it is so silly that it works. Most antagonists in shows don't really push the idea that, oh, they're terrifying, we need to deal with them. No, they are the equivalent of Saturday morning cartoon villains, where they just chew up the scenery, and they love to do it. I'm going to get to a character later on that literally is the definition of our cartoon villain, and it's like, oh, he's so golden, but it works. I'll get to the main character. I think I'll do the main characters first. Then we'll move on to some of the other issues with this kind of setting. Within this idea, basically it has a lot of connection with basically ancient relics and stuff like that, things from mythology. And for example, the first season revolves around what is called Durandal, and basically it just moves forward from there, and it explains stuff about that, and it does all this mess. But the main, I guess, minions, which are meant to be cannon fodder. You see people go through about 500 of them an episode usually. Would be the Noise and Arknoise, whatever the fudge they want to call it this time, because they really change it every 5 minutes. Basically, they're two different types of entities, but they're very similar. They're very plain looking, but the first one is basically immune to any conventional weaponry, while the other one is resistant to it, but you can deal with them, and it has been shown that they have actually been taken down with like guns and stuff like that, so they can eventually at some point do it. But the main characters obviously have the distinct advantage of being the main characters, so they have way more firepower. In the first 2 seasons, they often it was following a very similar progression. Basically, main character is shown, something happens, and basically we see them fight, and then the antagonists show up. The antagonist isn't who you think it is. You then switch, yada yada yada. That's just kind of how it is. With season 3 and onward, there's almost a set antagonist. They just keep it there, which is actually kind of nice. In the first season, we'll go over that first. We have 2 main characters we see immediately. Hibiki Tachibana, who is more or less the person who we'll be following through the main story. She's the protagonist of the story. She's the main character, all the mess. She has the most character designs to her. She has constantly evolved. She has like 8 different like major designs. She has all the friends. She's very nice. All of that mess. She could technically be defined, in best one case, a person who is nice but not to the same extent as someone like Shiro Emiya. They follow what's in the other music. She actually has a similar backstory to Shiro when you think about it. They both have PTSD. The only difference is that she's actually kind of gone past it, and she's just doing it at this point because, well, she can, rather than I must do it because I must be a hero with all that mess and shenanigans. It's kind of nice to actually see a character that interacts like how you would think they would. She has fun, she smiles, she laughs, she has her own problems, and they actually start going in depth with the problems as soon as it becomes G and GX. And they handle them fairly well, like how someone would actually handle them, which I'll give it credit, it works. In the first season obviously, as I said, is a little all over the top, and it doesn't really make too much sense, but they at least try. I think the main problem with it is that they tried to stay down to earth with it, and it just didn't end well. In G, GX, and Axes, they actually move forward and basically just ditch that entirely. There is technically a few other cases with most things. However, it is obnoxiously silly, so I don't care. She also has the uniqueness of using Celtic music, which is actually somewhat different. Almost every character uses usually music that is found in Japan, usually fairly. Because obviously Japanese show, only in Japanese songs. Makes sense. Whenever someone sings, they're generating whatever this force is, and they try to explain it, and they get it actually fairly alright, and then they just don't bother with it anymore so that we don't have to worry about it. In most cases, it's just silly. But most of her songs are, because they're Celtic, they're like a weird vibe to them, especially since she's singing it in Japanese, so it's a little silly. She also is one of the 2 sets, I guess, of official lesbian relationships within the show. Her best friend Miku they are very, 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 very clearly in a romantic relationship. Especially in G, where they even say they went on a date. They're on a date, so like it's very clear. Other than that, she is the only character because of a uniqueness that we'll get into when I explain what the fudge the Symphogear even are, and why they kind of work. She doesn't actually have any named attacks. They love naming attacks in this show, and she actually has none. Zilch. Nada. None. So, we'll get to that, I think, a little later. It'll be very, very fun and very interesting. The next character we meet, who serves as kind of like the rival character, I guess you would say, for a bit, and then shifts into a more likable persona, is Tsubasa Nari, who is also, once again, voiced by a fairly well-known voice actress and singer. She is probably the second best character in the show, just because she is so down to earth, and she realizes, oh wait, yeah, if I do this, there'll be problems, but I had to do this anyway. So they actually do kind of push forward, and it's actually kind of nice. But during the very first beginning of the show, she is fairly unlikable because she just constantly is angry, and you can never really like her. But later on, she gets very, very good. So in the first season, she's kind of crap. And then in G and onward, she's best character. Her singing, obviously, is one of the better ones because she is a devoted singer. The only serious problem I would probably say is that because of her voice actress having a very strong voice, which is actually kind of nice for an occasion because a lot of Japanese music has very light voices to it. She kind of stands out from all the rest of the cast. When she sings, you can always hear her above everyone else. Doesn't matter how loud they're singing. She just has such a stronger voice that you can hear it for miles, basically. She's also the only character to have brought back her original outfit from the first season and the second season because they swapped designs in the second season. In the third season onward, they modified the one from season 2, but they're more or less the same. She also has the most name techniques out of any character, which is rather amusing. She also is one of the few characters who does a lot of group songs, so you find her literally everywhere if you go looking at different songs and stuff like that. Original in most cases, she's just interesting. Though what's also amusing about her, well, not really amusing, but interesting nevertheless, is that most of her music is traditional Japanese style. So you have basically a cross between rock and the traditional Japanese. So you get kind of a nice fusion there. But another thing is, she's the only character to wield a weapon that's not westernized. She wields a Japanese weapon. Let's see. Each of the relics that will go into Symphogear, each one of them has basically a legend attached to it. Hers is Ame no Habekiri, the heaven-rending sword. Well, it's Japanese, while Hibiki, on the other hand, has Gungnir, which is a Norse weapon. And you'll realize, wait, that doesn't make any sense. So she's actually the only one to have Japanese attacks. Let's see. Other things is that she's the only character to use her Season 1 armor in Season 2. She figured out how to do that. She is similar to her actual voice actress. Let's see. Nana Mizuki had a strained relationship with her father, similar to how she did in the show. The parents' idea of musician and all that mess. What is amusing is that her childhood shows her as a small child being rather afraid of things. You go look at basically half of her other roles, and she is always a shy girl. Not always, but pretty close. So it's rather amusing. And then in GX, they have some... it's quickly shown that she is not an artist, but it's an actual drawing that Nana Mizuki did. And so it's like, wait, what? Yeah, they actually had Nana Mizuki draw it, and that's what she came up with. It is a rather amusing image. Sadly, I will not be putting it really in this. So if you want to go look it up, I'd recommend going look at the show, because the show is rather amusing. That is specifically in the third season. After that, we don't really get any new characters. We get all the supporting cast, which is a fairly diverse cast with silly shenanigans all around. For example, the Katsunari family, the person in charge of the main group, who is a relative of Tsubasa, specifically her uncle, has superhuman powers. To be fair, like half of the cast has superhuman powers that are still trumped by Symphogear. So, it's just... You have to remove any sense of, limit with this show. Then we get to the next character, which is Yukiri Chris, or Chris Yukine. She is the one character one of the 4 characters that join the show as an antagonist and then move on to be a protagonist. With her, she's questionably weird, but she's quite clearly shown that by the majority of the fandom, they like her. Me personally, she's enjoyable, and since season 2, she has gone on and quite clearly anything. If I relate it to other shows, I don't really know what to relate it to, but it's a rush redemption in the show, but then they quite clearly show that she's still struggling with it in the 2nd season. And even in the 3rd season, she's struggling with it a bit. But in the 4th season, she's quite clearly moved on from it. It's not her problem anymore. She has other problems to deal with. So it's very clear that she's gotten very, very different and moved forward. With her, she's changed a lot. She's had many different outfits. She's had many different looks. She's also one of the few characters... actually, no, I believe she's like the 2nd shortest character. So it's actually rather interesting. She's also one of the few characters to use more than one type of relic. So it's something interesting. Nevertheless, she uses Ichival, which is once again a Norse weapon. So, yeah, it's really hard to say what she really is, but she does have more songs than other people do anyway. There's a lot of information about her that you don't get because it's specifically in the manga, which is classified as a different canon. So you get different details. And she's also really the only one who has significant baggage going into the show. The other people, obviously, almost every character in their way has a problem with them, but Chris specifically has quite a few. I don't really want to get into detail with her because she's not really someone who's going into detail. She's actually very blunt. She's very straightforward. She's a character who, well, is blunt, basically. That's her #1 trait. She's blunt. She's straightforward. She's the character that everyone can understand. That's probably why. Now we get to the really weird stuff. Move on to the next 3 characters. There are 3 additionals that are created. What I actually find rather amusing is just simply how they do this and all mess. The next one, these 3 actually show up originally as antagonists. They're the 3 sort of main antagonists of G, and then they eventually join up with them and have, once again, the kind of rushed redemption that Chris did, but done a little more fluid, I guess, where they actually show kind of a progression to it. But it's quite clear afterwards they still have kind of problems in GX, and then in Axes they have no longer really any problems. So in GX, once they push it forward. She's also one of the few characters who had 2 relics at one point. She had a different version of Gungnir at one point, they called it Kuru Gungnir, Black Gungnir, and they replaced it with the Algatram, which was originally her sister's relic. I will not be going into her sister. If you want to know that information, go watch the show, I guess. Yeah, I don't really know. Maria herself is one of the few weirder ones because she's just, well, she's older. She's the oldest main character. She's 22. As a reference, Tsubasa is 19. In Axes. She's a little younger in the other one because it actually goes over a little bit of time period. Maria herself is interesting because she actually starts as an antagonist. She's shown to be rather leading, rather well-knowing, and is an intimidating presence. But she utilizes Linker, which is a drug that allows to increase those sync rates that I talked about really early in this. This is not something you usually see, except for these 3 characters. The first 3 characters are called attuned. They can just use whatever relic they're attuned to. These 3 don't have a high enough sync rate, so they need to use a drug called Linker to keep themselves together. And she and Kanade, who died at the very beginning of the show, share a specific line, which makes them very similar. However, Maria is actually closer to Chris in design than she is with Kanade. Specifically due to the fact that, well, she had a lot of problems. Maria, Kirika, and Shirabe all grew up in basically an orphanage facility where they basically were told, you're going to increase your sync rates, or else. They actually go into detail with this in Axes, where they fix a lot of the loopholes that really prevailed in G and GX. However, it won't make sense if you just watch Axes. She herself has a lot of problems, yada yada yada. Basically, she is the more kind of like shy one. She's also the only character to sing a complete song in English. There really isn't, once again, to say a lot about her. She has a tragic backstory. She worked past it. She's a good person. She's interesting, but yet she's also one of the few characters to not be Japanese. She's Yugoslavian, so she's actually completely and utterly not Japanese at all. In the slightest. At all. Like, Yukine is at least a little bit Japanese. But Maria is not. Moving on, we have Kirika and Shirabe. I'm going to talk to them together because they're the other set of quite clearly lesbian characters. And they're very, 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 very showing of it. Their songs, which eventually, in the second season and onward, all mesh together. Like, you can put them together and they make a completely different song. And they harmonize. Kirika, Kirika and Shirabe have what is called the Goddess Zababa, I think. Yeah, the Goddess Zababa Edgeworks, which is a combination of their two songs, Gokuren Ikalamia, and, 1 minute, I need to check that one, Okyo Shushagana. Those two songs, when together, meet more or less any other details. These main kind of plots, I guess, move their characters together, but they often butt heads and are quite clearly meant for each other, I guess would be probably the best word. But the serious problem with these two is that they are very streamlined towards one real personality trait. For example, Kirika says death. That's about it. She says death, she's hyperactive, and she cares about Shirabe. But Shirabe, on the other hand, hates hypocrites, is a hypocrite herself, and basically stares at Kirika whenever Kirika is being unlawful. That's about it. There's really nothing else special about her. The only thing is that Shirabe did have more personality development than Kirika did, because, well, Kirika did too, but Shirabe in more detail, because she moved past what she was doing and stuff like that. Well, Kirika moved behind. Basically, rather than moving forward, she looked to basically she hid herself away and all mess and tried to do things that were silly. Now that more look at it, yeah, G was really silly, but still really, really fun for some reason. Maybe the more silly it is, more fun it is. I need to look into that. Nevertheless, the main character cast is 6 characters that are very fun, very energetic, but you can understand them in detail. The only character that I'll say is probably going to become part of the main casting more would be Miku. Miku Konihara, I cannot say that correctly, is the best friend of Hibiki. However, she did become a temporary Symphogear user in G, and they used it actually rather well to the plot point to explain things. However, they have alluded to the fact that something happened at the end of Axes during the events of G, and they're bringing it back in Axes. So I would not be surprised if she becomes a lot more prevalent in whatever the fudge they call the 5th season, because there is a 5th season and it has been confirmed. It is in development and it's going to come out this year, I believe. So, shenanigans. Maybe I'll make a follow-up to this and I'll talk about the next season, and there'll be probably spoilers. Oh yeah, from this moment forward, it's even more spoilers. I'm going to be talking about the villains next, I think, because the villains are entertaining, to say the least. The first one is Fine. Fine, if you did not know, in Italian means end. That's about it. It's very simple, very straightforward. However, they take a lot from different mythologies here, so care to have your mind blown. Basically, Fine is a character that is a consciousness that rests within someone's within her gene sequence, and whenever someone is exposed to phonic gain, her personality emerges. No, that did not make any sense at all. Does it work in the sense of the show, because the show is silly? Absolutely. Basically, she created a tower, the Tower of Balal. If you don't know what that is, Babel. Yeah, Tower of Babel, actually. And then because whoever was in charge at the time period basically didn't like that, they struck her down and created what was called the Curse of Balal, which basically states, no humans can understand each other. That's not allowed. No. And so she moves forward to try and bring the world together. Problem is, she's evil. So, fun. And she's just like, she's probably one of the better ones because she just hogs this scenery. As soon as she gets on screen, you realize, oh, well, that's not going to last long. And that she was a pirate, so she has all of the credit. She is nowhere near the best, thing though. She's probably one of the more interesting ones because obviously her backstory makes absolutely no sense. But she does actually sacrifice herself during the events of G. Basically, Shirabe was shown to be going to be the next Fine. However, because Fine at the end of season 1, because she's the main villain, basically not really snaps. She returns her original persona to fruition and changes her mind through that, and then she understands. So she actually sacrifices herself, so we never really see her again until Axis, where we see her in a flashback where she's a pirate. Yep. Yeah, she's weird. But it's rather amusing. She's also rather sadistic as well, so that's a fun fact. There's epic battles with things. They also use her name in season 2 to basically try and drive the point that, well, Maria will be the new Fine, which is false. And during the events, Hideka thinks she will be Billy due to circumstances. However, it was actually Shirabe the entire time. But they do actually kind of show it. In season 3 and 4, she shows up as Ryoko for a very, very little bit, and she doesn't have a speaking role, really. She loves to hog the background, as I said. So she's rather entertaining to be on watch. And she's very clearly manipulating everyone, and it's actually real that, they actually, one of the people actually knew the entire time and was letting her do it, so that he could lure her into a trap, which is kind of fun, actually, when you think about it. And she said, you countered a scheme with a scheme. That's a rough translation. I'm not sure the official translation. So she's interesting. There's a lot of things about her, but she's fun. For a villain, she's fairly alright. The next villain, on the other hand, is probably the best villain, just because he is so silly. John Wayne, I cannot say that. He's the only villain, I believe, to be American. Yes. So he's unique. Basically, he looks like what you would think to actually be a pretty decent professor. He actually is shown from the very beginning of the show to be a good person. Until we see his betrayal in episode 2. Or at least it hinted at. And then it's explained, basically, yeah, the attack was his fault. He was the one who actually caused the attack to begin with, because he grabs a relic and hid it under his coat the entire time, and which caused the specific problems to happen. He is insane. No, really, he is the embodiment of insane. He's also very much like a Saturday cartoon villain. He hogs the scenery. Whenever you see him, they bring him back, let's see, in GX as a minor antagonist where he is literally stabbed with a harp, which is probably the most ironic way for him to die. He does come back in a memory in Axes, and he's even more over the top in that because it's a memory, and shenanigans ensue. However, any excuse to have his crazy voice in the show, I will take. As long as they don't really resurrect him, I don't really have a problem. He basically believes that he's a hero. The best hero. That's about it. That's what he believes. And basically, he wants to rule the world. Thing is, the way he explains it, it works, but he's so silly. He breaks down half the time, and he has this weird thing about going on about love, which it isn't later explained why, but it's still rather entertaining. Now, as I said, he was a minor antagonist in GX, where he is stabbed by a harp. A little girl named Carol was the one who did it. And she's actually not little girl at all. She is over centuries old. She is the beginning of the line of alchemists. There are five alchemist villains that are in the main show. She creates basically the equivalent of dolls to basically do her stuff for her. She then uses memories to she uses... I keep trying to do this right, but I'm not able to do it. She takes memories, burns them into energy, and then uses those for her attacks. She's probably the most way overpowered antagonist that the series seen. Because that's just how it is. She's strong, she's powerful, and they literally, once again, kind of move forward in weird ways. And there's apparently a song with her in Axes that I didn't know existed. Learn something new every day. Actually, it probably isn't sung by her. It's probably sung by someone else. They're basically... but the thing is, in a way, she's basically the same antagonist as Fine. More or less. Her motivations are very similar, where they both don't really know what they're doing. In this case, she literally burned the memory, so she doesn't know what she's doing. So, it's not the most... Once again, she's more fleshed out, because they actually do kind of explain. But she's nowhere near as entertaining as the other three villains, because she's just bland in a way. And they don't bring her back at all, because she is officially killed off, basically, in the events of GX. The next villain on our list is actually not a villain in and of itself, but a whole group, the Bavarian Illuminati. Yeah, they brought the Illuminati into this. I am not kidding. The Illuminati here have three major people with one person at the very top. So there's 4 people overall. So 4 main villains. 3 you see all the time are Saint Germain, Calixoro, and Prelati. Yes, those last 2 names should be very, very, very... all 3 of the characters are female. And they're all alchemists in some way. She, in and of herself, Saint Germain, is probably the most fleshed out villain without a redemption. She doesn't redeem herself. She does not join the main cast. She dead. She dead, man. She dead. She, Calixoro, and Prelati all die, and they basically fight for what they believe in. They literally are the only characters in the show who kind of basically they redeem themselves but don't join the main cast. It's about this simple. Calixoro is based on Count Alessandro Calixtoro, who is an Italian musician who was a part of the Illuminati. Well, apparently. And due to specific other shenanigans, she is now female and all a mess and not really well explained in the show to a specific extent. However, she is quite clearly fun. Other than that, it's basic, straightforward. She probably has the most fun out of all the characters in the group, but Perlati is probably my more favorite of them because she's the silent one that hogs the scenery, which is two things that make absolutely no sense. But it's still, once again, just like Calistoro, originally female, move forward. Originally male, move forward. She is based off Francois Perlati, who was the one who gave basically Gilles de Rais the different ways of doing things. If you don't know who Gilles de Rais is, Gilles de Rais was a lover of Jeanne d'Arc. As soon as Jeanne d'Arc was killed, he went insane. That's basically the easiest way to put it. Perlati was the one who kind of pushed him to it. So he was an asshole. But this character kind of redeems herself for being nice, fun, and she hits people with a toy. But finally, we move on to the actual villain, Adam. I cannot. Oh, here we go. No, I can't pronounce that because I'm not good at German. He's German, obviously. He is based off of the actual creator of the Illuminati. They actually share the same name. Well, the original Illuminati. He's dead, and he's very clearly a strong alchemist because he can literally transmute gold. However, it is shown he is weaker than Fine. He lost a battle with her. So it's very clear that he is not quite as strong as Fine, but she's pretty bloody close. Also, you have to realize that actually with all three villains, in a sort of way, Dr. Ver, but not really completely. The main cast had to use what is called the X Drive, which is basically Deus Ex Machina. To be fair, they had to work for it, but it's Deus Ex Machina. They explain it, at least how it works, so we understand how the Deus Ex Machina can happen. They even call it miracles, so it is literally, the definition of the X Drive is Deus Ex Machina. I am not kidding, that's basically literally the definition. So it's rather entertaining. He's the only villain they defeated without it, but that was due to them not having enough energy to pull it off, so they had to figure out a different way of doing it. So they pulled out different things, and they had to move stuff of that. He is... Oh yeah, he's also the only human, put it in brackets, living character to have ever been killed. Like, straight up killed by the main cast. So it's actually kind of terrifying. The other thing is, he's also very similar to Fine in the way that he likes to hog the scenery, but he does it a little better. Dr. Ver is probably the more entertaining of the two, but Adam is probably the better antagonist, because his motivations are clear, he explains them, and he literally doesn't care who gets hurt. He's probably the best villain in the show, just because he hogs all the fun. In most cases, with alchemy, it's just something different. I've been really ranting, yeah. Sheesh. This is going to go on for a while, by the way, so yeah, we're not done yet. Next up, after that, we have what are called the minions. These are called noise. The noise, which are literally just noise, because, in the original show, it made sense why they would be called that. Arcanoids, Alkanoids, whatever the fudge you want to call them, because they're not bloody explained well enough, and no one has bloody decided on an equal translation for it. Basically, those noise are simply stronger versions. Basically, noise, they target humans, that's about it. However, they can be controlled using what is called Solomon's Cane. Solomon's Cane allows you to take and summon noise and control them. However, it is completely destroyed in season 2 and is never seen again. Alkanoids is created through alchemy, and that nothing too special. The stories of the show is fairly straightforward. However, it does actually go in. The reason why I wanted to talk about it, even though it's silly, is that it actually goes into some actually pressing issues. One good example is PTSD and people's reaction to it. See, let's say you're in a big accident, like a gigantic accident. Well, and you get government compensation, but you're the only one to live. So let's say out of 100 people, you're the only one to live and you get all the government compensation. Yeah. It doesn't, if you're in a very conservative environment, sorry, I want to poke fun at conservatives here. Well, far-right conservatives, excuse me. Yeah, you're going to basically poke them to death. You're going to bully them to hell. And that's exactly what Hibiki went through. And it is shown in detail how it was. And because of it, her dad ran away on her. They didn't get her parents didn't get divorced. They just left. So they were in separate areas, but they were still technically married. So it was different in a way. Most people really don't come back from that. Hibiki, with the help of the other characters, kind of moved forward. Until GX, where they brought the big man back, they brought her dad back, and showed that she was... What would happen if, let's say, you ran into your like, father that ran away from your home? I think it's like 5 years later? 4 or 5 years later? It's like... No, not even that. It's 2 years... Yeah, it's about 3 years. So 3 years after the event, what would you do? Well, most of the time, you would either punch them or run away. And that's exactly what Hibiki does. She runs away. She doesn't want to face it because it's like, no, you're an asshole. It literally is that. And they move forward with the idea of like helping people move forward and basically get over it. She eventually comes to terms with how her father is, and she just realizes he did technically do good things for her and stuff like that. So she gives him one chance, one singular chance to try and help their family. So it's at least sort of closure. I'm going to think in next season they might show more of her family just to explain more detail. I already went over Tsubasa. Chris, let's just say her mother and father were killed. Done, dealt with, there, boom, done. She's an orphan. Maria, orphan. Kirika, orphan. Shiraibe, orphan. It is literally the most straightforward thing. The 4 characters that join the group are all orphans. Deal with it. That's about it. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of like, why are all of your protagonists orphans? With most cases, it's just something different. Let's see, what else? What other characters are orphans? Oh yeah, Carol is also an orphan. Oh no. So problem. Oh, Saint Germain's also an orphan. What's with all the orphans? I don't know. The other thing, it also covers like the facts that people are afraid, people don't want to accept certain things. Goes in detail. It does still have the good old like friendship fixes all the problems routine, but it does it in a way that's somewhat entertaining at least. So, and refreshingly new. Also, I should probably go into the songs because the songs are often either very good or kind of crap. The songs vary from being, well, once again, very good to very crap. Every entrance theme, their beginning theme, intro, whatever fudge you want to call it, is sung by Nana Mizuki, who is the voice actress for Tsubasa Kazunari, while all the ending themes are sung by, I have to check this, there we go, by Ayashi Takakaki. I think I'm probably butchering that. Basically, she's the voice actress for Chris Yukine, so it's two characters, two of the main characters singing both the opening and closing. So that's just kind of how it is. They also often have, well, little interludes where they sing other things. But as I said, Symphogear, they sing during battle. Now, one of the people's main complaints about it show is that they have seen someone fight without singing. Yes, they can fight without singing. It's very clear. However, it's been specifically stated kind of within the show that if you sing, your sync rate goes up, which means your damage output goes up, which means you'd have less chance of killing yourself. It's basically that idea. That, and they also state that the singing is kind of subconscious. They do it without even trying. It just happens. Basically, when you put on the Symphogear, you start singing. And by the way, yes, like people go, oh, then what about the music? Yeah, the music actually is in the show. Like the music actually exists. It's actually playing. So it's a little silly, but it works. Within most cases, this kind of works to the show's advantage. It can be as silly as it wants, and it can explain how it and why it's so silly, with the main characters being silly nevertheless. Miku and the other Hibiki have a friend who constantly pokes fun at the fact that this is an anime, even though it is one. So it's silly and fun, lighthearted. Lighthearted. Actually, no, lighthearted most of the time. However, don't go into this show thinking it's for kids. No, this show is not for kids. It is very specifically shown that it is not for children under the age of 13. I actually did kind of go check. Even in Japan, this show is not for kids. In Japan, it's for 13. Basically, it's meant for teenagers and adults. Well, young adults would probably be the better statement. It has quite a bit of blood and quite a bit of suggestive themes, but mostly blood. Let's see. In the first season, we see multiple people cough up blood, crying blood. I think in the second season, we have some of that again. We have one of the main characters' arms getting eaten off. We have a character literally being torn from the inside by rocks and stone and all that mess. In season 2, we have, I think there's blood and other stuff as people try and do things. There's people once again crying blood and seeing blood come from places that probably shouldn't. In the fourth season, we see someone literally get torn in half. So, no, this show is not meant for children. However, the music can. Well, it depends. For example, with Chris Yukine, she has a lot of swear words in her songs. But really, all the others don't. So if you feel like it, and you can understand what they're saying, you can throw on basically any character songs other than Chris for the whole house, and it really won't matter. I did actually literally go look up the songs and go look down. Other than that, yeah. That's more or less the entire show and its context. I didn't really go into immaculate depth, but I at least kind of explained in detail what was happening. If you want to know more about the show, you can either go to the Symphogear Wikia, or you can go watch the show. It is on Crunchyroll, so you can go watch it there. I think they have all the seasons. Not sure. I know they have GX and Axes. GX you can hop right into because it starts with a new kind of antagonist. It moves forward, and it still covers most of the basic topics. If you want, you can also, if they have just G through them, you can once again just hop into G. You don't want to hop into just Axes. Even though they do cover a lot of the information in Axes, they don't cover all of the information, so it gets a little bit if you're not careful. But they do, once again, they cover all the main characters, they do go over everything, and they have an epic battle sequence. I will end this out with probably the best line in the show. It's in the first episode of Axes, they're fighting basically a military force of Elkonoids. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward. That's kind of normal. However, the person controlling them at the time, which was a minor antagonist who wasn't meant to be important, basically had a giant flying fortress. And because the Symphogear users were basically blocking every attack he had, he says, time to fight Ludicrous with Ludicrous. And in the context of them doing it, it is probably the most amusing thing to come out of the show, just because of that one line. So if you do want to go watch it, make sure you don't go in with huge expectations. It's not a giant show which explains everything in detail, but it does try its best to actually be silly, not for the sake of being silly, but not taking itself seriously. Because half the people have supernatural powers, and they don't even question it. So we have to they don't take it seriously, we shouldn't take it seriously. Or we can take it seriously and laugh at the shenanigans that ensue. Alright, hopefully this tangent has ended enough for you, and we'll have some fun next time. Bye-bye!